We are going today to finish the Augsburg Confession. To reiterate and sum up, here is a list of their complaints against the Catholic Church: indulgences, pilgrimages, abuse of ruthless excommunication, requirement of celibacy, unmarried priests, to miss Mass is a sin, saint days, holy days of obligation, feast and fast days, parochial rites, public confession, burial rites, sermons on extraordinary occasions, and then any other so-called new doctrine or doctrine of men. So there have 14 major complaints in the Augsburg Confession. So let's go back. Let's look at each one. Indulgences. So the church itself will admit that some of the priests went too far in their promotion of indulgences. And hey, that happens. But it wasn't official church teaching that was bad or anything like that. The main problem with indulgences is that they were being abused, and it was beginning to look like simony, which is a sin. One of the first heresies in the Bible that's mentioned in the New Testament is simony. You can't pay for miracles. You can't pay for in exchange for holiness. It's not an exchange of funds. It's not a transfer. It's a gift. It's not monetary. So that's a problem. And the indulgences were being abused. Now, almsgiving is a good thing. Giving to the church, teething, is a good thing. Giving to the poor is a good thing. And conforming your lifestyle to the precepts of Jesus is a good thing. So what's the problem with indulgences? Is that when it starts to look like simony. And yeah, the Catholic Church admits that during this time period, some of the bad priests and bad monks went too far in indulgences, and it became a means of them making money. That's a problem. Greed is a problem. But it's not really a problem against the church, because there's always going to be sinners in the church. It is a church of sinners. Pilgrimages, problem number 2. So they don't like the idea of going and doing the whole pilgrim thing because it's saying that a certain area is holy. The next problem that they had was abuse of ruthless excommunication. Now, on one hand, I don't agree with this complaint at all. On the other hand, from the Protestant point of view, even now, they are still upset about anathemas and they freak out about it. But ruthless excommunication. So they don't like the idea of there being consequences for going against the church. I mean, that's kind of a cop-out. The requirement of celibacy, specifically the requirement of celibacy on priests, they feel that is a thing that they don't agree with. They still don't agree with it to this day. So this really hasn't been rectified, and the church has increased in its promotion of celibacy. Unmarried priests, they think priests should be married. There are some Protestants who have argued that Paul and Peter were married. I don't know. I haven't seen that proof. I read those articles and they sounded convincing, but then once I actually looked into it, there was no proof that any of the people they were mentioning were actually the wives of these apostles. They're complaining that it is a sin to miss Mass. It's a sin not to go to church on Sunday. They're complaining about it here, but modern evangelicals would say you have to go to church on Sunday. So I don't really get what they're aiming at with the reformers here. They're complaining about saint days, about holy days of obligation. Saint days and holy days of obligation are kind of similar. Here's the thing with saint days. Every day is a saint day. Just every day. Is that a big deal? I don't think so. I think it's actually really good. I have 2 books that I use for the saint day stuff. So as a Catholic, in the movies, like, oh, Catholics are all about saints. The truth is most Catholics don't know more than 5 saints. It's just not a thing that we do on an active basis. And we're not like going and praying to saints and doing all this like weird stuff you see in movies. But every day is dedicated to a different saint in a parish, in a diocese, in in a C, all the way to the whole church will have a saint of a specific day. I don't really think this is a big complaint, and I do think it is advantageous to know stories of holy people, to know how they were holy, and so that way you can practice, and that way you can kind of see how you can be a holy person. So it is a good thing to have examples of good holy people. I mean, I can see a better argument than the one that the reformers are making, which is where we can't judge people's hearts, so how would we know if someone's holy, someone's saintly? But that's not the argument they're making. They're just saying they don't want to do special prayers or do special observances. Speaking of observances, days of obligation. So going to church on Christmas, going to church on Halloween, All Hallows Eve and All Hallows Day, and different days like that, Easter and Sundays. They don't think there should be days of obligation. That just makes them look lazy. They have a thing against feast and fast days, which on the modern Catholic side is not really so much of a big deal anymore. But there was a time where feasting and fasting was super important in the Latin calendar. It's still very important in the Orthodox or Old calendar. Parochial rights. This is like property in schools and libraries. I don't really see a problem with that. I know that the church at one point owned a lot of property, and a lot of Protestants had a problem with that. But now that evangelicals and Protestantism is so huge in the United States, a lot of Christians, a lot of pastors own a lot of property. You go into a small town and go look for the largest house there, it's probably going to be the local preacher who has that huge mansion or that huge house. So this doesn't really hold weight anymore. They have a thing against burial rights. I don't know. That's just kind of stupid. I don't see what their complaint is, unless they're saying that they can't bury someone without a priest being present, but that's not the case. Sermons on extraordinary occasions. I mean, we don't really do sermons like we once did, which I would love for there to be a modern day John Chrysostom, someone who after Mass is doing a whole hour of lecturing on the readings, like just the readings. That'd be awesome. I think priests should do that. And then they have a complaint against any so-called new doctrine or doctrine of man. This is going to be pretty much any infallible statement from the Pope. There's only like 7 of them. The biggest list I think you can find is 12, but there's only like 7. Any of the councils, I mean, they're just complaining about any kind of doctrine or doctrinal development, which doesn't make a lot of sense in modern context, because if you look at these same religions, they now have tons and tons of doctrine of their own. You look at the Concord in Lutheranism. You look at, everything, all the writings of Luther and Calvin and MacArthur. Whatever version of Christianity you go to, you're going to see doctrine and you're going to see development. So this last complaint holds no water. That's the summary. That's it. Hopefully I got sound. And talk to you all later next time for Back in a Trent.